This is Kathy Chase. There's some more things I need to point out to people. Chase Robert Spicer. I never met him until mid-April of this year. I did not know him prior to this year. I think that was planned, of course, obviously. His name, Chase Robert Spicer. I didn't even know his full name until, later on, after I knew him for a couple months. I never paid much attention to it. The fact that I met him in mid-April, you know how this weird significant thing where they have this tax thing. I met Rob in mid-April of 1990, and I met this guy mid-April of this year. So, they thought they were going to try to pull something. Well, this is something that's been planned. Chase Spicer is pretty much exactly 10 years younger than Robert Wesley Chase. And I'm sure he had to have been named after him. My kids, sometimes Sean looks just like him. They have to be related. Then another thing I wanted to talk about today. The fact that it was okay for Rob to have a relationship, still with me, or pretend to be, or he still said he loved me and things like that, about, just over a year ago. And now they're trying to manipulate anybody I talk to now as to not be okay. And if you tell me if that's not favoritism, then what? Because this was only a year ago, just over a year ago. I was it would have been about a year and a half ago, I was still having sex with Rob. We still had a relationship, sort of, it was on the rocks, but, and so forth. So, you can see the favoritism. The fact that he had other relationships, backwards plans, and they're trying to use this other guy's name to try to cover it up, but if you look at him and you look at my son, if you look at Chase Robert Spicer and look at my son and look at Rob, you can tell this guy almost looks more like Sean than he does, and I don't understand that, but they're obviously related. I did not know him. I did not know Chase Robert Spicer until April of this year, and he's not even my boyfriend. I'm not going to make any other comment than that, but he's not my boyfriend, and we hang out, we're friends, but there's nothing other than that. I mean, it's not a boyfriend girlfriend situation. So I wanted to make that clear. Then KVC, once again, I have to talk about this. The girl that I'm seeing, the KVC people sent me to somebody for counseling. Okay, this lady looks just like Shannon Bartusik's mother, Christy. So I'm sure they're related. I will get her card and put her name online with this message. But I wanted to make those things clear, that this ordeal was planned. As I said, Chase Robert Spicer, his number is 96. He went to New Mexico State. He was a football player. He was number 96, and we know what 96 is. 96 is the Amendment RICO, and he had the 3 Ps on his license plates when I first met him, meaning he's related to the 3 presidents. Just like a lot of people did in town, but they've started to, replace those with the newer plates. Then, as I said, they're trying to manipulate me having something planned before, Rob did. I had my baby 2 years ago. I had nothing planned. I had my babies. I would never have gotten married to Rob had I known he had other plans in life. So you're failing. I would never marry somebody with intentions to have something planned later with, Kim or Shannon later on. I would have never married him. I don't even know where their crazy theories come from when they could have gotten married to begin with, and it looks so stupid. They could have gotten together to begin with. Instead, they got to drag in my kids and try to make my kids, their little guinea pigs for more profit. And that's bullshit. He doesn't care about his kids. To his family, all these kids are just, that's why they don't care about him. They try to make me look bad so that they look better, because they've got all the money to push money around to try to work things out conveniently for them. And that's not how things work, because so many people in society know what's going on and the manipulations, and that's why once again, media is not here. I'm not getting married. They're not gonna use some sexist thing that they can try to push, looking for different ways to try to own me, which they can't do. The presidents can't own me. Do you hear me, Barack Obama? Do you hear me, George W. Bush? You cannot own my life. You cannot own somebody's life. You can't use another marriage to try to own my life, and you can't protect people by favoritism. That's another reason why we're not in court, because there's favoritism here, and that's why presidents aren't judges. You know what I'm saying? So, and I know there's a lot of favoritism with Shannon, and obviously Kim, and local people do know this, and your little debate, you should have never made to begin with, because if you had favoritism for the people that are responsible, including Randy, Scott Traver, and Rob, you should have never, and all the monies that have been generated from my life that you all are sitting on, hoarding it out of greed. Everybody knows here. Everybody knows. Everybody knows in the country now, because you couldn't keep things private. You couldn't be, for some reason, you can't just stop your little game to just pick on me. Well, you've made it obvious. You don't have media around, and all you do is pick on me. Well, why do you do that? Because you're guilty of something, right? You don't pick on people unless you're guilty of something. So why is it you can't just learn to be nice? Because you didn't do anything to prevent things. Not my fault. Nobody did anything to prevent things. Not my fault. You can't mix up liabilities with government and corruption elsewhere to try to kill me, as in murder. I'm not on death row. I've never killed anybody. And, if you can't, be nice, then don't do something at all. And, insulting me doesn't make you look any better. And the fact that media is not here, the fact that all people do is abuse me. When you abuse people, it shows what type of people you are. And it shows your lack of irresponsibility, your irresponsibility, and your failure to be rational. And when when you show all those things to the public, they know that means you're guilty. That means you're hiding stuff. That means, as I've been going through this phase of uncovering things by cross-examination, they know that, that's what's going on. And if you can't be rational, if you couldn't come up and be nice to me, if you wanted to pry into business in which these people that are prying and trying to manipulate, most of which are responsible for actions that have happened to me in my body, and if they thought they could pry enough to try to hurt me, but they never try to pry enough to try to prevent problems, which, what do you have there? You have premeditation. And that for you not to stop, you just keep proving yourselves guiltier and guiltier and guiltier. I've asked you to stop. I said there's nothing legal about what you're doing. Just trying to divert attention away from you. And your intentions, and no media, the fact that you wanted to corner me because you were worried about me getting money because of all these liabilities. And the liabilities, well, yeah, they go all the way up to government. And, you can't mix corruption with liabilities to try to justify killing someone and try to look for ways to own that person to try to justify killing them, when you could just be reasonable, rational, professional, and citizens already know that there's always going to be corruption. But when you mix it and try to produce a public murder, and all this evidence has been uncovered, then the citizens I see now look pretty darn concerned, and I would consider looking for a quick way to learn some rationality and some responsibility, and learn to be an adult about the situation. I already tried to say, hey, I'll make things easy for you with the liabilities thing. Don't try to point yourself out to trying to cause more problems, because you're not going to be able to manipulate the rest of government when I've already said, hey, I'll work with you. You don't have to corner me to death, okay? So, it's sick that you couldn't enter into my life enough to try to help me at any point, whether it had been 10, 15, 20 years ago, or, instead you thought you could pry enough to make this big old mess and try to blame me for it by letting people attack me in my life because of liabilities that you're trying to cover up and all this other stuff. And it's like, it's got to stop. You got to stop somewhere and say, okay, enough's enough. Okay? And I think other people agree that they see this. You could see it all over, everywhere. Everywhere I go, people know. And you've got the public scared. The presidents, George W. Bush and Barack Obama, you've got the public scared as hell because of what you're doing to me and my kids. And they think enough is enough, and then they say, why don't you just, give up on trying to hurt me when you have no real reason to. I've never done anything to a president. I've never premeditated crimes or put things in other people's bodies. And I've never killed anybody. So you have no justification in trying to hurt me over manipulations of government and liabilities and all this other stuff. I said, I talked to government. Well, I'm willing to work with government. I'm not sure I'm willing to work with presidents because they protect all these people that have done all these things to me, and they themselves have some issues involved with all this mess. And I'm just saying, enough is enough. Enough, just knock it off. Just stop. Just stop making my life a living hell because of liabilities and other people's issues with it, not having any integrity to look out for other people in their lives and to not care about other people and people that only care about making a buck. It's sad that people don't care, about other people, because this never would have happened. Obviously, you're only supposed to pry enough to care when it comes to people, and everybody knows that in America. If you see somebody, in trouble, or you want to prevent something from happening in their life, or disasters, or anything. You look out for that person and you say, I think you need some help. Let me get you some help with this, or this. The things I've talked about with the RFID and all this other stuff. Instead, people went and pried enough to manipulate, starting this PITS process. Well, I know where the PITS come from. Well, Rob works in a garage, and he's a monkey wrench. And what monkeys do? They scratch their under their arms and stuff and eat bananas because they're all crazy. And then all these people from Southeast wanted to, spoiled, wanted to create this problem that's not mine. And the Lassons and Shannon and all these people don't own me, and I'm tired of these people manipulating my life because of corruption, okay? I'm tired of the corruption. I shouldn't have to pay for money that you made off my life, as I have been. That's what I'm paying for. I'm paying for money that you've made off of my life, and you're just trying to, people know you're guilty when you don't show any compassion, when you're picking on one person who's absolutely harmless, and her kids who are absolutely harmless. They know That's very cold. You don't do that to people in this country. This has never happened before, and your little game has never happened before, and there's nothing legal about it. This just doesn't happen in the United States of America, and it should never happen. It should never happen again, and I shouldn't have to die for other people's corruption and other people's money and other people's greed because, you know, hey, I said, here I am. I'm the one you're supposed to be talking to. That's the way it always should have been. So, anyways, I want to make some things clear about, you know, I have to keep documenting as I go with this whole KVC and social services thing because, as I said, the lady that I'm seeing now for counseling, it looks like Christy Hubert. So, just so people know that. This is Kathy Chase.